Although, like many such people, they really asked for help themselves. When Helen's husband began the slow decline of Alzheimer's, Helen needed to reach out to others, perhaps for the first time in her life. Lamont writes what happened next. A lot of us were there for Helen, by phone and for walks. We could listen, nod, sigh, and not descend into the trough she knew. We persuaded her to let others inside. We promised that this was the way up and out of the pit. People showed up. Neighbors, relatives, college friends from 50 years before who came from all over the country. How can you promise someone that this net will catch her and hold? You can't really, but it did. After a time, there was flow again, and in the flow there was connection. So she was not alone. Flow and connections sort of says it all. Helen and her husband had slivers of courtship for a while, hands touching hands, hands touching arms. She was his salvation, although sometimes he couldn't place her. She went every day to see him. Small moments were what lifted her. From the window at the home, she and her husband saw birds, the deer stepping across the yard, gophers, visions that could fill them for a fleeting second, which is what our lives are made of. We assume that vision is either the narrow focus or the big sweep, but it actually shifts and is both. Helen's heart was broken, of course, when her husband died. Yet somehow or other, time passed after his death. Helen's heart had softened, and she had grown strong. She will always be lonely here without her husband, but she loves much of her life again. That's proof enough for me that love is sovereign, that most of the time, love bats last. And this is what she had to offer when our dear mutual friend's son grew deathly ill. A promise that we do endure, and that out of the wreckage something surprising will rise. Helen was proof that in the cold wind, if you can lean against others, none of you will blow away. You keep each other from falling or help each other get back up. Someone holds out a hand, or even scared old you may hold out a hand, and a person in need reaches for it and hangs on.
Back in January, the radio program This American Life aired a show entitled Good Guys, all about what the concept of being a good guy means in today's society. One of the stories was from a deep-sea diver named Don, who was interviewed about a particularly harrowing dive he experienced in a cave in South Africa. The cave was 900 feet deep and entirely underwater. Don and his diving partner Dave were on a mission to recover the body of a fellow diver who had been lost during a dive in the same cave a decade earlier. This was no recreational dive. This was serious business. Each man accepted the risks involved, knowing that 900 feet of water pressing down on you leaves no margin of error. Dave descended first, with Don following. Then, when Don reached about 830 feet, he heard a sharp crack. His rebreather controller had imploded from the immense pressure of the water. But since he was a consummate professional, Don knew what to do. He had trained for moments like this. He knew he needed to add oxygen to his breathing mixture manually. And since Don was a consummate professional who had trained for moments like this, he knew that the mission of his dive had changed. He was no longer there to help collect the body of the lost diver, or even to help his diving partner Dave. His job was to stay alive long enough to get back to the surface. At these depths, Don The surface is not somewhere you can actually go to solve the problem. When you have a problem, you have to solve that problem there where you are. And if you don't solve that problem, you don't come back. You have to put the brakes on, as it were, at this point. Don was adding oxygen manually, but getting the right saturation was difficult, causing Don to black out repeatedly and come to. And as if losing consciousness 800 feet below the surface of the water weren't nightmarish enough, Don also lost hold of the guideline, which was his only direction to the surface. Apparently, at these depths, the human inner ear loses its ability to sense where it is in space. Describing that experience, Don said, "You have absolutely no sense of up, down, sideways, anything. And I really didn't have any sense of where I was." After much passing out and reviving, combined with swimming in tiny directionless circles, Don eventually found and grabbed hold of the line again and was able to continue his way towards the roof. Soon after grabbing that line and stabilizing himself, Don encountered a group of support divers. From that point on, Don said, the guys had a task, which was to support me. My only job was to breathe. Now, I will admit that I didn't take from this story the lesson which the producers of This American Life intended. If you listen to the entire broadcast, you will learn that this story is less about Don and more about his diving partner, Dave, who ended up dying himself in order to complete this task of retrieving the body of the diver who had been missing for 10 years. As you will recall, the story was from the show with the theme Good Guys, and this story exemplified the kind of sacrifice good guys make in an attempt to honor a fallen friend and bring peace to the family. It's a powerful and moving message, but that's not the primary lesson I took away from this story. That message is not why the story has stuck with me for the past few months, and it's not why I'm sharing it with you now. The first message I took away from the story was that deep sea diving is really, really dangerous and don't ever do it. The second was how Don's experience in the depths of the cave can be applied to our own lives. I'm guessing that most of us aren't deep sea divers who regularly spend time with 800 feet of black water on top of us. But I'm betting most of us have had times when it certainly feels that way. And maybe it's because I'm a minister, but I can turn any story into a parable. So here's what I learned from the parable of the deep sea diver. When things started going sideways on his dive and his breather imploded, Don knew he had to stop. He had to abandon the plan and immediately start doing what was necessary to take care of himself. This is huge. And while Don reports this action as being the most practical thing in the world, it is actually a profoundly wise response. Another dead diver in the cave would help no one. Don mentions that it was his training that allowed him to do what needed to be done so quickly. He had practiced for the moment his rebreather might implode or that he might pass out. This practice allowed him to make the decision to aid in his own rescue. He didn't quibble about whether to turn back or keep going. He knew he needed help. Then, after struggling in the dark, hopping in and out of consciousness, not knowing which way was up, Don used what energy and clarity of mind he had left to search for the lifeline that could lead him back toward the surface. And once he finally grabbed hold of it, he did not let go. He met the support divers. And then, this is the aspect of the story that struck me the most, he trusted them to get him back home. From that point on, Don said, the guys had a task, which was to support me. My only job was to breathe. My only job was to breathe. Such a simple sentiment, yet it summarizes what it means to be lifted up by others and supported by community when accident, loss, depression, or grief barge into our lives. What it means to find a companion when you find yourself utterly lost. When I heard those 6 little words on the radio, my only job was to breathe. It brought to mind Kathleen Cheater-Bonanno's poem, which Julian shared with us. One by one, the others press their bodies against us, until finally we tire and lean in to their patient animal breath to wait it out together. There comes a time in our lives, often many times, when we need the support of others just to make it through the next day, the next hour, the next minute. When we need to lean into the patient breaths of our friends and family and wait it out together. When we need to trust those around us to lead us back to the surface while we focus on the all-important, sometimes extraordinarily difficult job of just breathing. When we need to take the hand that is reaching out and hold on. And just as there are these times in our lives, there are the times when we will be called upon to be the support divers, to be the friends who will walk with another through the valley of loss, to be the patient animal breaths our bereaved companions can lean into. I want to bring us back to the parable of the deep sea diver for a moment. The part where Don knew at the bottom of the cave what to do at the bottom of the cave because he had practiced. And assuming we'd rather not take up such risky hobbies, where on earth do we practice this kind of vulnerability? Where do we practice that kind of trust? Where do we practice just breathing? Where do we practice being present, having patience, and committing to a community larger than ourselves? Where do we practice all these things before our lives depend on them? Because they do. Our lives depend on them. I've got great news. You're here. You're in just the right place to practice vulnerability, trust, and breathing. You're in just the right place to practice presence, patience, and commitment. This month's spiritual theme is exploration, the practice of getting lost. And this is a phenomenal spiritual practice because what getting lost fundamentally means is you are not in control. And I think some of the most valuable spiritual practices remind us of this in various ways. And if you're anything like me, you hate the feeling of losing control. And I know I can use all the practice I can get, even though I don't like it. Being lost requires us to practice all of the skills we rely on when we find ourselves being crushed on all sides and no idea where the surface might be. Writer, professor, and priest Barbara Brown Taylor has lots to say on the topic of getting lost. In her book, Altering the World, she writes, "This rock-bottom trust seems to come naturally to some people, while it takes a disciplined practice for others. I am one of the latter, a damaged truster who hopes she has lots of time to work up to the advanced level before her own exodus comes. To that end, I keep my eyes open for opportunities to get slightly lost, so that I can gradually build up the muscles necessary for radical trust. You will think of ways to get lost, or to accept that you really have gotten lost through no choice of your own. It can happen anywhere, in all kinds of ways. You get lost on your way home. You can get lost looking for love. You can get lost between jobs. You can get lost looking for God. However it happens, take heart. Others before you have found a way in the wilderness, where there are as many angels as there are wild beasts, and plenty of other lost people too. All it takes is for one of you to find them. All it takes is for you to find each other." Here Taylor is pointing to the mutuality and interconnectedness of this endeavor we call being human. This seeming contradiction which lies at the heart of our time here together. We are both the Savior and the saved, the wounded and the healer. We are the lost and the guide, the broken and the whole. Together in this web of community, we take up these roles almost simultaneously because we hold these paradoxes within ourselves. We accept help with one hand and offer help with the other, because in so many ways, the accepting and the offering are not so different. The spiritual teacher Randall said, "We're all just walking each other home." Again and again, I have found this to be true. As a hospice chaplain, as a minister in this community, as a human being practicing being lost just like everyone else, I see that no one has all the answers. I see that we are all vulnerable, noble creatures doing our best to be brave in a world with no guarantees. And I have witnessed, over and over, the power of community gathering around so someone in their midst can just breathe. And every time I've witnessed this, I know I'm in the presence of the holy. Here, together, we have the opportunity to practice getting lost, a chance to risk trusting that the net will hold, a space to learn how to be support divers, and a time to remember to just breathe. We're all just walking each other home, and what marvelous companions you are to have on the journey. Please join me in saying, "Blessed be," and amen.